All right, everybody. Hello, and welcome to week 3. This is week 3 of your culinary class. You guys are doing awesome. I know Chef Kevin told me earlier, and I know Chef Lee will probably say the same thing for the papers she's graded. The work has been really good that I've seen coming in for week 2. You guys are definitely understanding the knife skills. You guys are understanding that puree and not using that electric component for that starchy puree. Another thing on the puree that makes it really gummy is if you boil it too hard. I've seen a couple, not many, but a couple that were like, why is it so gummy? Why is it coming out this way? Because it was boiled too hard. So if you make sure you get that up to a boil and then immediately turn that down to that nice simmer, it's going to release those starches better. And when you go to puree that, you're going to get a nice, smoother, creamier puree without it being that gummy stickiness to it. All right. So make sure you're taking a look at that. If you've messed it up and you think it's too gummy, that's why. Keep practicing it. You know, it's one of those things that you're like, I'll never use this. And you tend to. You do a lot. If you look at a lot of different recipes or a lot of different really fancy plating and that kind of thing, you'll see those purees on the bottom of the plate. You know, it's just something that gives that plate texture. It gives it a sauce without giving it a sauce. And one of the best things I always like to compare it to is think about pairing this with like a really beautiful grilled steak. So you're going to pay, $40 for a beautiful filet mignon, but you don't want to put a sauce over the top of that. Hello, it's a filet mignon. You're not going to cover that up. So what are you going to do? How are you going to get that beautiful texture on that plate? You're going to make a beautiful puree. You're going to swipe that underneath that steak, and you don't need a lot of it. You don't want a stack of mashed potatoes next to a filet. You want a beautiful, silky smooth puree. You're going to put that steak on top of it. It's going to be grilled beautifully. It's going to look amazing. And then people are going to get that plate and go, oh my God, this is gorgeous. They're going to have that texture and that contrast and the flavor of a meat and potato dish without having that overwhelming potato with that beautiful steak that they're paying a whole lot of money for. That's what we use a lot of the purees and stuff for. So think about that when you're making these things. You know, again, we're trying to make things for that restaurant level, that high-end quality. You know, we had a question before class actually started of how high can you guys go? And I mean, I expect, the sky is the limit, on what you guys can do. It takes time. As soon as you graduate, are you going to go out and be an executive chef or an owner? Probably not. You're probably not going to have the background or the experience needed for that level yet. Can you get there? Absolutely. It takes work, it takes dedication, and it takes learning. I still learn stuff every single day. I mean, I just learned a couple blocks ago from a student that if you're allergic to shrimp and shellfish, you're allergic to crickets, which how crazy is that, right? Who would have thought? And granted, we don't always eat crickets, but sometimes you do. Sometimes they're on the menu at places. I wouldn't have known that. So we're always learning stuff. So make sure you keep that in mind, that you're always learning, even if you graduate, even after you go somewhere else. Like, you can learn stuff all over the place from everybody. You learn what you want to do. You also can learn stuff you don't want to do. I mean, think about it. You've worked at places and you're like, oh, wow, I never want to be a boss like that. That's learning too. So keep an open mind whenever you work at places, and think about those things and think about where you want to take your career. All right. Are there any questions, concerns about week 2? Oh, wait, you want to say one thing really quick on your knife skills. One of the best ways to make sure you're practicing those knife skills is every time you go into the kitchen to make something, think of a knife skill, think of something that would relate to what you're making, and purposely cut that knife skill. So if you go in just to make a salad, think of something. Okay, I'm going to make small dice carrots. I'm going to make cheese, and I'm going to make the oblique cut on a cheese, which you can do, but think about things like that. Cheese is a perfect one to practice on. It already comes in a block. I mean, think about it. You don't have to block that cheese out. It's already a block. Easy peasy to practice on that. The more you practice those knife skills, the better you will get. Practice makes progress. It's never going to be perfect. It's always going to be an in progress. So just keep that in mind. The more you do it, the more you're going to practice, the more you're going to get better at, the more it's just going to be that second nature. Your muscle memory is just going to learn what to do. All right. We don't expect you guys to be perfect right off the bat. We know it takes practice. That's why we always want, whenever we ask for a knife cut, we want you guys to purposely practice that knife cut for a reason. There's a reason we're asking for knife cuts. We want those practiced. All right. Any questions or concerns with week 2 so far? No? All right, Chef Lee, do you have anything to add? Anything that you've seen?
I have seen some great work, and I do want to reiterate what Chef Kathy said. If you don't get things perfectly this first time or the second time or the third time, don't sweat it. I mean, there are days when if I were going to go in the kitchen and do some bâtonnet cuts, I might not get it just right because I'm not working in a professional kitchen. I'm teaching now, so I'm not doing it every day. But, you always practice those knife skills. You continue to work on learning these techniques. And because this is a foundations class, everything that you're learning in here is you're going to be able to build upon it and grow upon it. So somebody just asked in the chat what the brunoise cut would be used for. More often than anything else, I use it to garnish. We would do brunoise red peppers and garnish the plates, so it looked like a little sprinkle of I don't know, a pop of red on the plate. So there are lots of different uses, but that was the way that I used it the most often.
A lot of times you will use that little brunoise on an onion because you want that onion to have the flavor, but not the texture or the look of an onion in a dish. So if you cut it small enough and you sweat that onion out, you don't caramelize it, you sweat it out nicely, that's going to give you that beautiful flavor of an onion without giving you any texture, without giving you any color, without giving you that appearance of an onion, which is always good. All right. I can't type fast enough. I can talk faster than I type.
Got it.
All assignments are graded in the order that they are received within 48 hours of when they are submitted, unless they are submitted after 4 o'clock on Friday or over the weekend. Then it starts that Monday count because I don't work on the weekends. I know Chef Kevin doesn't work on the weekends usually, nor does Chef Lee. We might look at stuff, we might answer questions over the weekend, but we certainly do take those days off because everybody needs time off of work because it's work. And that's why you get days off. So anything turned in over the weekend is usually graded either Monday or Tuesday, and then 48 hours for each day that things are turned in after that. We try and get them in sooner because we want to try and get everything in as soon as possible, but we do each have over 100 students in each class. So we want to make sure that we're giving everybody the same amount of time as well. So think about the time that we take to grade yours, we give that to everybody else as well. So we want to make sure that we're grading everything efficiently and correctly. So we don't promise you guys that 24-hour turnover because we want to make sure we are devoting enough time to each person. As class goes on, that does get smaller. In your later classes, there will be less people, but still that 48-hour window is our grading period. All right. Okay. So that being said, we are going to jump right into week 3. I am going to go over a little tiny bit about the screen because I've had a couple questions still about finding things. So I'm going to share my screen. And I have 2 screens now, so I'm sharing my other screen. All right, so this is your class page. Everybody see their class page, correct? Thumbs up, you see that? Okay, so in the top left corner, there's this little hamburger looking thing. And yes, everything I say is related food-wise because I love food. So you're gonna click on little hamburger and this is gonna come up. All of your weeks, you're going to click on grades. I'm in student mode, so I don't show you guys everybody else's grade. As you can see, again, I'm a really bad student and I have done no work. I've done nothing. I'm horrible. But if I had done work, my carrot puree first week assignment would be here. My grade, my percentage would be here. And then my feedback video. This is super important. Click on this video. If you're like, wow, why did I get an 86? Click on this video. It will tell you why. I promise you, everything that we've taken points off for is in this feedback and why we took those points off. All right, so make sure you're doing that. The contribution to course total isn't super huge. It's just how much you've done. And I kind of don't like that being on there because if you went to the live session, if you're here at the live session, why would you watch the recording if you didn't need to? If you missed the live session and you only watch the recording, then it's not going to count the percentage for the live session. However, that doesn't affect your grade. It doesn't make your grade less. It doesn't make your grade more. That percentage is just a percentage of the course that you've actually participated in. It will count towards your attendance, but it does absolutely zero for your overall percentage. So don't worry about it. If you don't go to the live and you're only watching the archive, that's fine. It's okay, as long as you watch one or the other before you do your assignment. We definitely want you guys to watch this before each assignment each week, because we do go over the assignment specifically and different details that might be present or what we are requiring for each week is in these live sessions. So we want to make sure that you guys are getting that. All right. You guys know your tutoring is here. Course Quick Links has your video on how to do your assignment, how to submit your assignment, how to submit your discussion forum. Super important for week 2. You can still go in there and do those discussion forums. You can still go in and do your week 1 quiz if you haven't done that. It won't count yet. You're not going to see the grade in there. The computer will hold your highest grade out of 3 attempts. It's going to be held in that computer. And then every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we make the computer see it and it'll recycle it. And then it'll see that grade and it'll post it, but it does remember it. I promise. Computers are smart that way. They do those cool things. So make sure you're looking at all of these quick links. And we're going to go into week 3. Week 3 is our grains and legumes. Grains are anything that has a grain in it. We're going to be focused on rice particularly. And legumes are basically French for vegetable, but we are talking legumes to be beans, peas, and lentils. That's what we are focusing the legumes to be. Please, 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 it is super important each week that you go through and you click on your interactive lesson. One of the reasons being that I found out earlier is in your grain varieties of this interactive lesson. Come on, computer. Definitely read all of this. I definitely want you guys to go through all of this. What is gluten? All these cool little YouTube videos are so amazing. We are going to go over more of the actual details of this in study hall tomorrow. If we get a chance, if we don't get to it today for class, but I do want to go down because I found this really cool video. All right. Super important, right? Dicing your onion. How to dice that onion. You are dicing onions this week. You will dice an onion pretty much every week from now on. When you get into the kitchen, usually one of the first things that you do as a prep cook or a line cook or the chef that's on duty is cut onions. There is no surefire way to not cry. There's a whole lot of different theories. One of the reasons that you cry when you cut onions is because of the oils in those onions. I suggest putting your cutting board away from the vent. So like if the hood vent's behind you, remember that's sucking up air. That's going to suck that onion oil right past your face. Okay, go to the other side of the table. So like a hood vent or something that's going to suck up that air is pulling that away from you. That will help. It's not going to make it 100% guarantee that you're not going to cry, but it will help. Cold water helps. Hot water does not. So make sure you can take a break, go rinse your hands, go rinse your knife, go rinse your cutting board in cold water. That will help get rid of those oils. I don't know why hot water doesn't work as well, but it doesn't. It kind of dissipates it more and makes it worse. Cold water is better, I promise. Just learn from the experience on that one. But please watch this video. Again, it's a 2-minute video. It's not super long on how to dice that onion. It's really important. Again, that is in that interactive lesson part of your assignment. So you want to make sure you are going through there. I will say the professional cooking chapter 14 on your legumes and grains is super important as well. Please read both of these. As you can see this week, there is no quiz. Okay, there's no discussion forum. There's no quiz. There is one assignment. That assignment has 2 recipes in it, yes, but there's no quiz. There's no discussion forum. That's done on purpose because week 3 is the end of conditional enrollment. We want you guys to focus on making sure that your week 3 final grade is above that 60%. So if you need to go back and look at your discussion forums and make sure you've answered at least 2 peers, make sure your answer makes sense and is getting full credit, you can redo your answer. You can just resubmit. You don't have to edit your submission. You just go in and you add to it. You can even send me a little note saying, hey, I added some more to my discussion forum because I didn't get full points. Make sure you do that. Look at your discussion forum again. Go to those grades, the little hamburger up there in the corner. Go to that, check your grade. Look at what you got on your quiz. Look at what you got on your assignments. Look at what you got on your discussion forum. Because if you're missing your narrative, that's 15 points. Maybe it just didn't get submitted correctly. Maybe I can't see it. Watch that video feedback and it'll tell you. If you have resubmitted it incorrectly, you are allowed to resubmit that so we can see it. Make sure you reach out to Chef Lee or myself, depending on which class you're in, and we can make sure that we can see your narrative and all of your work to give you full credit that you've done. So make sure you're looking at that grade because it's coming up on week 3, the end of this week, which is, remember, our weeks start on Wednesday, end on Tuesday. So coming towards the end of next week, we want to make sure that all of you guys have that 60% or higher to stay in the class because we love you guys. We want you guys to stay because it's kind of fun. All right. So make sure you're looking at that. That's why we have no quiz this week. However, the information from the interactive lesson and your reading can possibly turn up on week 4 quiz. Okay. We're not just letting you guys slide with this information. Some of this information might be on next week's quiz to make sure that you guys are reading it and keeping up on the chapter and the interactive lessons that you're supposed to be doing. Okay. So just make sure you're doing those. Plus, trust me, your lesson, your assignment, your cooking assignment will be so much easier if you've read the interactive lesson and the professional cooking chapters. It will definitely be a lot easier on you to get those done. There's a whole lot of other recipes in there that are really good. All right. Watch the live. Do your assignment. This week's assignment is your rice pilaf, and then either your frijoles de olla, which is Mexican pinto beans, or your Breton style white beans. Okay, so either or on the beans, not both. You're doing the rice pilaf, yes, and then you're picking one or the other of the beans. You're not doing both, you're doing one or the other. Okay, study hall will be tomorrow. We'll go over a lot more of the actual interactive lesson type things. I want to make sure I get to your assignment today so that you have that, so that if you want to start on that or make sure you go shopping for that, you can. Lab assignment, your picture requirements are listed here as well. All right. So we are going to start with week 3, your grains and legumes. These are all your techniques that we are working on for this week. I know it looks like a lot of techniques. That's because we have a lot of different recipes. Knife skills. You are working on knife skills. If you do the frijoles, you are definitely working on knife skills if you do the white beans gratin. You know, because they're seen more. The pilaf method, pilaf is not a type of rice. It is a cooking method. Okay, we're gonna go over some other ones that'll surprise you too. Your slow cook or your simmer, then you're soaking, because you're going to soak your beans, whether you're using the pinto beans or the white beans. You are not using canned beans at all, ever. You are using the dried beans. And then your sachet, if you are using the white beans gratin, we're going to work on a sachet, which is a little flavor packet. It's kind of cool. All right. All right, this is my quiz section. These are the 3 types of beans we have, or legumes. We have kidney beans, peas, and lentils. There are others. These are the types that we mostly use in the West. Kidney beans include your white beans, your pinto beans. All of your actual kidney beans are in that white bean family, and a lot of other ones. Lentils are obviously those tiny, tiny little ones. Usually green is the most popular, but then there are red and yellow. There's even brown lentils. And then peas, obviously you have your green peas, which we all know what those are. And those are what my mommy forced me to eat, and I hated them because she made them gross and she put them in tuna. Never mind. This is why I started cooking early. We have yellow peas and then the black-eyed peas, because everybody wants those at New Year's. This is my quiz question. How many types of beans are there? Anybody know? I can't see our chats. What do they say? Where's my chats? There we go.
You got 30,
30,
11,
31. Higher.
25, 50, 475, 50, 68.
Oops. Oh man. Can't make my little thingy go away. And I had such high hopes for that. My animation's not working. It is 400. There are 400 types of beans. That's in your reading. But yeah, there are over 400 types of beans. So definitely just scratching the surface with these 3 different kinds of beans for sure. All right. Like I said, you guys are going to be doing your pinto beans, which is your Mexican frijoles, or your white beans breton. This was to remind me where I'm going. Because sometimes. All right. So we're going to look here. Remember, we're going to go up to your interactive recipe book. We're going to click on that. You click to the table of contents, and you can click on the week or the chapter. And we are going to start with beans, because I want to come back to the rice, because I really like it. All right. So your pinto beans, or your frijoles, because, you know, yeah. 3 cups of beans dried. Okay. You are going to want to soak those overnight. One of your pictures is those soaking. I repeat, I do not need a self-ID and a sanitizer to soak your beans. I do not care if you throw those in a bowl the night before in your jammies. I don't want a picture of it. Unless they're cute jammies, but no. I'm Mickey Mouse jammies and they're pretty cute, but don't need to see it. So don't need to see your self-ID or sanitizer for soaking the beans the night before. Okay. I do need to see it the next day when you start actually cooking. So save that self-ID and sanitizer for the next day. All you're going to do to soak your beans is you're going to put them in a bowl. Make sure it's a deep enough bowl or a pan. The big saucepans work, and then you're going to make sure you're covering those. 3 cups of beans means 3 quarts of water. It looks like a lot of water, I promise you, but those are going to soak that up. That's the point of those beans soaking, is that they're starting that process. You're breaking that outer seal so that they'll absorb that water better. They'll cook, they'll take less time to cook, and they'll actually be creamier when they go to cook, which is huge. Okay, so then you're going to get your half a cup of onion. This says sliced thin. I know the video that's here, he does go ahead and dice them. I'm actually not all that particular. If you want to slice them for your pinto beans or dice them, I don't care. Okay, as long as they're cut in a form shape. If you're going to dice them, I want them diced nicely. If you are going to slice them, I want a lyonnaise cut. You can look up how to do a lyonnaise cut. It's on one of the videos. It's in your recipe book, but it's kind of towards the end for those self-help videos. I will post one later in my class. I'm sure Chef Lee has one as well that she can post for that lyonnaise cut. But if you want to just go ahead and do that small dice that they're showing you in the video on the interactive lesson, that's fine too. Okay, then you are going to cut your onion, or your onion. Then you're going to take a garlic clove, 1 to 2. You know, I love garlic. 2 means 3 to me. So, you know, then you're going to chop that. Yes, cold water. And then you're going to take your jalapeno. You want to chop your jalapeno. Again, I don't just want it hacked away. I want a cut. I want a small dice on that jalapeno. I want something that looks like you took time to cut it. Granted, the small dice on a jalapeno is not going to be the same as it was for your potato. It's not going to be super even and consistent. It's not going to be those nice, beautiful little cubes. Okay. Your small dice for your jalapeno is going to look more like those Scrabble tiles because it's a thinner product, right? But you want to make sure you're doing some kind of consistent and even cut, okay? Which means I don't want to see tiny, tiny little pieces and then great big pieces and then some more great big pieces and then some little tiny pieces. They have to be very consistent. Remember, if something's not consistent, it's not going to cook evenly. Lard or fat, again, these are Mexican frijole beans. Lard works best. It just does. Bacon fat works. Vegetable oil works, right? Any of those things work for your beans. Okay. Now, thinking about beans and rice, a lot of people think vegetarian. You can absolutely make either one of these dishes vegetarian. Okay. You're going to take out you're not going to use lard. You're going to use that vegetable oil, right? You're not going to use any kind of, when we go to do the rice, you're not going to use any kind of chicken stock. You're going to use a vegetable stock. Okay. But that's not to say that these are vegan. These can be vegetarian, but they are not always necessarily vegan. Okay. Remember, vegan means no animal product at all. No butter, no lard, very little oils, that kind of thing. The beans can definitely be vegan because you can change this to any other kind of oil. But you're definitely going to want to look at that when you start looking at that rice pilaf. And again, these are things that are in that interactive reading and that chapter that talk about these different things. If you're going to start working on menus for your restaurant and those kinds of things, you have to know when somebody comes in and says they're vegan, what's in your food. You have to know if they say they're vegetarian, what's in your food. It's super important. Whether you believe that lifestyle, whether you want to follow that lifestyle, I'm not saying any of that is good or bad. As the chef, as a cook in a restaurant, as a server in a restaurant, you need to know what's in this food for those reasons. All right. So you're going to soak your beans overnight. I need a picture of them soaking. I do not need that self-ID and sanitizer. You're going to drain and rinse them off. Okay. You're going to rinse them under water. One of the reasons too you rinse those off is because sometimes it doesn't happen a lot now. It used to happen more a long time ago. They have better machines now. When they sort those beans, little tiny rocks used to get in there, and they still do occasionally. But remember, those rocks aren't going to split open and they're not going to be the same texture as those beans once they've soaked. So you're going to rinse those. You're going to look for those little rocks and that kind of thing that aren't edible. And you're going to just throw those out. It doesn't mean your beans are bad. It just means that you just want to get rid of them. Okay. You're going to combine the water and beans and onions and garlic. Okay. 3 quarts of water. Add it back. You're going to put that, your water, your onion, you add everything in your pot. You're going to put it on. You're going to bring that to a boil. Boil. Then you're going to reduce it down to a simmer. Once it goes down to that simmer is when you cover it. Okay. You're going to cover that and let that simmer for about an hour. You do want to check from time to time and make sure that it does not need more water. If you look at it and the water is starting to evaporate quickly, add more just until the beans are covered. You don't want to drown them completely, but if it starts looking like it's getting dry, add some more water. It's perfectly fine. Once those are done, and those are going to split open on you a little bit when they're done, you're going to see them splitting. That's when you're going to want to take them off. Okay. Your sauce around them should start getting a little bit creamy because they're going to split open and they're going to release that starch into that water, and it's going to start getting that beautiful creamy texture. That's when you add your lard or other fat. Okay. And taste them. If you need salt, add a little salt. You continue simmering just a little bit until they're tender. Do not let them go dry. If you need to add more water, do so, but do not drown them. All right.
Can I, there's some things
Absolutely.
coming up in the chat that I'd like to address if I could.
Absolutely.
There've been several questions about using vegetable oil or shortening. Please do not use those things. They don't have any flavor. And the whole point of putting this in the beans is to give it some flavor. So use olive oil. That'll give it a nice flavor. If you're vegetarian or vegan, totally fine. If you don't eat pork, you can use another type of meat fat, if you will. Although turkey bacon doesn't really produce any fat, beef fat would work. But the point of that is to give it some flavor. Smoked turkey wings. Okay, so that's kind of getting away from the recipe a little bit. But I will say when I cook greens and when I cook beans, I always do put some kind of smoked meat in it, whether it's a ham hock or a smoked turkey neck or what have you. So if that's kind of your go-to thing and you want to enhance the flavor a little bit with one of those, I'm okay with that for Chef Kevin's students. Chef Kathy, I'll let you speak to that.
I would rather you not, because for the simple reason, I really want you guys to see what this is supposed to look like following that standardized recipe. When you go to work in a restaurant, when you go to work somewhere and they do beans, they're usually not going to add a whole lot to them until it's very specific. So they're going to have that bean cooked first, and then they will add different things later sometimes, but it's going to be very restaurant specific. So if you do add something, add very little. You know, don't overwhelm it with whatever meat you're adding, and kind of keep it more towards that bean focus.
You can also prepare them and take your photos. And then if you want to add, some meat or some sort of animal product to it after that, you can do that.
Absolutely.
Let me make sure I got, there was a question about jalapenos. Just whatever you get at the grocery in the produce section is fine.
If you don't like jalapenos, please, you can use poblanos. They're not as spicy. Anaheims are good. As a last resort, you can use a green bell pepper, but remember that doesn't have a whole lot of flavor. We do want some kind of pepper in there because we want to have that texture of that pepper being in there. We want to have that practice of cutting it and the practice of cooking it with it. So make sure that you're adding some kind of a pepper. Again, whether it just be that simple green pepper, but a poblano, if you don't like the heat, poblanos work great. All right. I'm going to share my screen again. I have the assignment pulled up. And again, this assignment has both the white beans and the pinto beans because I wanted to show you guys an example of each, but you will just do one or the other for your assignment. So for those pinto beans, open. These are our pictures. All right. Self-ID sanitizer. Like I said, I only need the one. I don't need you to do one for the night before. All right, we have your beans soaking. Beautiful beans soaked in plenty of water. We have your mise en place. We have your diced jalapeno and then your chopped garlic. Everything in your water brought to a boil, and that's going to be reduced and simmered. And then your beautiful plated beans. You can garnish it with your jalapeno if you want. You can garnish it with some parsley. You don't have to garnish it, but I do need to see your beans separate from your rice. I know, if you're like me, you eat rice and then beans and then a huge thing of cornbread. That's how we serve it at my house. I don't want to see it plated like that because then we can't see both dishes separately. So show me your beans separate. Show me that beautiful viscous, which is the consistency of that sauce that's been around those beans. It's going to get that beautiful thickness. That's called a viscous. It gets that nice, tender, beautiful, creamy look to it. And we'll talk about why it does that, which is kind of cool. So just make sure you're showing me that. Those are your required pictures for the pinto beans. All right. Any questions on pinto beans before we move on to the white beans breton? Which I love too, because they're so yummy. All right. We are going to go back and look at our white beans. Oh, go ahead, Leon.
When you do that soak, is it better to do it inside the refrigerator or you just let it sit on the counter?
I'm in a mixed school of this. I grew up in the South and we used to leave a whole lot soaking on the counter. But I also leave butter on my counter all the time. And because butter doesn't need to be refrigerated in my house, neither did eggs. So you can cover that and put it in your fridge if you think your house gets too warm. If you have a very fluctuating temperature in your house, I do recommend keeping that in the fridge. If it's going to be longer than like a 10-hour period, definitely in your fridge.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have any other thoughts on that, Chef? Is that
Exactly what you said. I mean, I'm from the South too, so
we just left it on the counter?
leave it on the counter. We leave a pie on the counter overnight, unless it's got dairy in it. An apple pie that stays on the counter. But in terms of professional cooking and being mindful of the temperature danger zone, which is 40 to 140, when bacteria can grow, you do want to keep that in mind. So I'm sure your kitchen's not below 40 degrees. It's probably not hotter than 140 degrees. So use your judgment. I live in Oregon and it's still nice and cool here. So if I wanted to leave, my house goes, it gets really cool at night. So if I wanted to leave them out on the counter overnight, it would be totally fine. If I lived in Atlanta, they would go in the refrigerator.
Right. So yeah, there you go. It's kind of one of those things, in the restaurant, I will tell you guys, we used to soak, if we were soaking our beans, we'd put them in those big plastic Lexans, fill that thing with water, throw that plastic lid on it and slide it into the walk-in because it's out of the way. I mean, that's pretty much it. After we labeled it, because we didn't label it once and the health department made us throw them away. It's horrible, horrible. All right. So we are going to move on to your white beans breton. Breton's just the style of cooking of the white beans. All right. Again, you're going to soak these overnight. You are going to put them in cold water, cover them by 2 to 3 inches. Don't need your self-ID or sanitizer for that. The beans you're going to use are a white bean, a cannoli bean, a white navy bean. Any of those work just fine. Again, do not use canned. Trust me, we can tell if they're canned beans. Super easy as far as it goes for this one as well. You're going to take your white beans, you're going to soak them, you're going to drain them, you're going to put them in a pot, you're going to cover them with water by 1 inch. This one doesn't have you measure out your water. This one just tells you to cover it by about 1 inch. Again, depends on what pot you're cooking it in. I recommend for both of these, make sure you're using some kind of pot with that beautiful thick bottom. You don't want that really thin aluminum bottom because that's going to scorch and burn. You want to make sure that your pot has that nice thick steel or copper bottom so that you can cook these for a long time. Remember, this is going to be on the stove for an hour. You want to make sure that you have that nice thick pot at the bottom to be able to cook these that long. Okay. Coolest thing about these is you're going to put a carrot stalk, a whole carrot, a celery stalk, and an onion, a small onion peeled and roughly chopped. I usually roughly chop mine. You can leave it whole, but your carrot, your celery, and your onion are going in there pretty much whole. You're not cutting them. Everybody's like, what? Trust me. Then your sachet. A sachet is a little packet of herbs. You can do this with a cheesecloth. I recommend you guys getting cheesecloth. You will use it throughout this class and many of the others. Cheesecloth can be found at your grocery store. Walmart has it, Target has it, Fry's, Kroger, H-E-B, Piggly Wiggly even has it. It's usually in the cooking section or the baking section. It can also sometimes be found, like I know Kroger has that section where they sell like dishes and that kind of thing. You can usually find a cheesecloth in there as well. Get a packet of it. You can order it on Amazon. It's actually pretty cheap. So you will use it a lot for these classes. I do recommend getting it. If you do not have cheesecloth, if you can't afford it, you can't buy it, you can't find it, you can use a coffee filter. I know, right? Take the coffee filter, put the herbs in it, 1 bay leaf, parsley stems. You will not be able to buy parsley stems in the store. Please don't message me or Chef Lee and ask where the parsley stems are. When you were there, all you could find was whole parsley. That's all you will be able to find, I promise. You're going to take that whole parsley, you're going to pull the tops off, you're going to cut those up really nice for garnish. You're going to put those in a nice airtight container, put those in your fridge, and you're going to use the stems for this, okay? You're going to put some stems in there. You're going to put clove as optional. I actually don't like clove in mine, but that's a personal thing. Thyme is, of course, optional. I love thyme. And you're going to take that sachet and you're going to tie it all up together. Again, the interactive lesson and that chapter reading go through how to make that sachet. So you want to make sure you're following that. If you're going to do the white beans gratin, you're going to make that sachet because you're going to pull that out at the end. You don't want herbs floating around in your beans. You want to pull that out. You want the flavor of it, but you don't want that overwhelming herb in there. All right. That's why we make the sachet. You're going to use it for more than just this class, I promise. Then you're going to simmer those until tender. You do not want the white beans to break open. Remember how we said the frijoles, the pinto beans, you want those to kind of crack open. You do not want the white beans to get to that point where they're cracking open. They can crack a little tiny bit maybe, but that's when you pull them. They're done. You know, you don't want your white beans to really get the same viscosity as the pinto beans. They're a little bit different in that. You're going to drain them. You're going to save the liquid. Okay. You're going to get rid of the vegetables. That's why we left them whole. And you're going to get rid of that sachet. Again, why we put it all in that sachet. You're going to saute your onions. Okay. You're going to take an onion. You're going to dice that onion. You're going to saute your onion. You're going to add your onion in your pot. You're going to add your garlic, let that soften. Again, you don't want this to get caramelized. You want this to be nice and sweated. That means translucent. You don't want a lot of color. You don't want it to get caramelized. You're not sauteing it to get it brown. You're basically sweating it, which means you're going to go that low and slow heat, a little bit lower, so that you're going to get that just translucent. You're going to add your garlic until it softens. Again, you don't want that to get color. You're going to add canned tomatoes. I know, don't look at me and roll your eyes. I don't want fresh tomatoes. Fresh tomatoes are not the same as canned tomatoes. The reason we use canned diced tomatoes with the juice is because they've already been cooked. They've already had the seeds and the skin taken off of them. That's what we want for this recipe. We want it to already be cooked down. We want it to already be diced. We want that skin to and the seeds to already be off of that. If you were to do whole or fresh tomatoes, you would have to take those tomatoes, get the skin off, get the seeds out, cook those down for about 2 to 3 hours, let them cool, take that liquid, then you could probably use them. That's not what we want you guys to do. It takes way too long. I promise you, canned tomatoes are going to be just fine. You're going to cook that out of them. It's going to be great. You add those canned tomatoes. You cook that for a few minutes. You let that reduce. The liquid that's in those tomatoes needs to reduce. So you're going to cook that. You're going to simmer that. You don't want that to boil really hard. You just want that to cook lightly. Okay. You're going to add your bean mixture to that, stirring carefully because you don't want to break apart those beans. You're going to simmer that till those flavors get a little bit more blended. If you need to add back in some of that liquid that you've saved, you're going to add some of that back in as well. Again, that's why you've saved that liquid. If it looks too dry, you're going to add some of that back in. This is what it should look like. All right. So you want to make sure that you go through that recipe and follow it exactly. Benjamin, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Do we have to do, because I didn't hear you earlier, do we got to do both of the recipes or just one?
Nope. You're going to do one of the beans, the white beans or the pinto beans, and then you're going to do the rice pilaf. Okay. So you're going to pick the white beans or the pinto beans, and then you're going to do the rice pilaf.
Oh, okay. Understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Leon, you got a question?
Yeah, I found is using dried tomatoes going to work for this
Nope.
recipe?
Nope. Canned
Ouch.
diced tomatoes.
Okay.
Okay. There's a reason, I promise. Trust me, they work better for this. And most restaurants will use the canned diced tomatoes.
Chef Terrence had a question about whether something was available at Wenco, and I missed what that was. Terrence, what
Cheesecloth?
is it? I'm sorry?
Was it cheesecloth?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay. You think they do?
Oh yeah. I love Winco.
I love it too.
And ask them, if you go in and you don't see it, ask them if they have it. If they don't, and I know the other day I found it at Dollar General, which I thought was weird, but hey, I'll buy it anywhere.
That's when you say cheesecloth, that's that thing that looked like a wet napkin, but it's like,
It kind of looks like gauze, but it has a tighter weave.
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, and you can't use gauze because things will just fall out. It'll disintegrate. But it's a very thin fabric. If you don't have access to it, like Chef Kathy said, you can use a coffee filter. I've had students use a little cut piece of a really old thinned out t-shirt. So
Nylons work.
nylons work as well.
Please use clean ones though, because
Like I'm gonna use nylon, but okay.
I mean, you can buy nylons and you can buy clean ones. I mean, you don't want to use dirty ones because yeah.
Yeah, if you have tomatoes that you put up that are diced and canned, yes, you can use those. That's fine.
As long as they are skinless and seedless.
Um,
Well,
Let's-
Darius,
I'm not sure whose hand was up first.
I don't know.
Yes, I'm here. Hey. So, how do you actually take the tomato seed? How do you take it out?
You don't. You buy canned tomatoes.
Oh, okay. And the other question, like for the sachi, I don't know if I'm saying this right. Did you actually open that bag, or you just put it inside of the bean?
For the what?
Sachet.
The
Yeah,
sachet. No, you're going to close it. You're going to tie it closed and you're going to leave it closed because that's where your herbs are going to come in. They're going to flavor it, but then you're going to take that completely out. So you don't want those herbs floating in there. You just want the flavor of them.
So while the beans are boiling, so I'm gonna put it inside of the
Mhm.
water.
Yep. You're going to put
Okay.
it in the water while they're simmering. Yep.
For how long?
You're going to simmer them until they're done.
Oh, until then, okay. Good.
And
Yeah,
then-
and go ahead.
Sorry.
Tina.
Make sure you don't boil them. You want to bring them to a boil and then lower them to a simmer. If you boil them the whole time, A, you're going to cook all the water out before the beans are done, and B, they're going to disintegrate. They're going to cook to mush. So when we talk about a simmer, you want to see little bubbles popping up, but you don't want to see a constant roll of bubbles in the liquid.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to share the pictures for that real quick. Ta-da. Okay, your mise en place for your white beans Breton is a lot. All right, your beans, these have already been soaked. And then all of your beautiful mise en place. And I just thought this one was just gorgeous. And then your bean soaking. Your pot, everything in there, your whole onion, your carrot, your celery, your sachet. See the string of the sachet right there, but it is in there. See, it's floating right there. And then their white beans Breton. That's what they look like. They're really delicious. This is why we use those canned tomatoes, because we want them to kind of disintegrate on there and have that texture to it. You want to make sure that they do get that beautiful texture to those Breton. All right. Now, rice. There are 3 kinds of rice pretty much, short grain, medium grain, and then long grain. We are, for this recipe, for the pilaf, we are focusing on the long grain. Usually long grain rice is what you will find in the store on the shelves. You have to specifically look for short grain. You can find short grain. Short grain is usually your arborio or your sushi rice. Your short grain rice is going to be rounder and it's going to be more starchy. It's going to be more sticky. Hence why we use it for sushi and that kind of thing. Your long grain rice is longer and slender, and it's usually less starchy and less sticky. I can't move, my little animation is not working on this, and I'm not sure why. So really quickly, anybody know how many varieties of rice there are? Anybody? There's a lot, a whole lot, like more than the beans. 120,000 varieties of rice in the world. Isn't that crazy? Like, that's a lot. We only get like 2 or 3 in the grocery stores here in the West. The long grain rice you find in the store is going to be what you're looking for this assignment. Rice cooking is all about ratios pretty much. You want to make sure that your long grain rice is your basmati or your jasmine rice, that plain rice that you get. It's light and fluffy. It's about 1 cup of rice to 2 cups of liquid. Okay, that's your general measurement. It's not always exact. Okay, your medium grain or your arborio rice is going to be a little more sticky. It's going to be 1 cup of rice to about 1.5 cups of liquid. Your short grain or your sushi rice or your black rice is usually a lot chewier, and it's 1 to 1 1/4. Brown rice we're not making, but it is 1 to like 2.5. So it takes a whole lot of liquid for a brown rice. Please do not use brown rice for this recipe. It takes way too long to cook. It does not cook right in this method. And technically brown rice is not in the same variety of rices as your long grain rice. Kind of weird, huh? Now, just to let you know, rice pilaf is a method of cooking. It is not a type of rice. It is a type of cooking. You can cook any rice the pilaf style. You can actually cook any grain in the pilaf style. You know, when we talk about like gluten-free and that kind of thing, a lot of people think rice and that kind of thing, you know, or those kinds of grains. Think quinoa, think couscous, think those kinds of grains. Quinoa is awesome if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, because that quinoa is usually your complex protein, which means it will mimic a meat protein, better than a lot of other proteins. So you want to make sure you're following something like that if you're following that vegan or vegetarian diet, because you want to make sure you're still getting that same nutrition. Things like the quinoa and that kind of thing can do that. You can cook a quinoa in the pilaf method. It takes a little bit longer and the ratios are a little bit different, but you definitely still can. All right. I do want to go over the recipe for the pilaf really quick before we run out of time because we're getting close. All right. Super easy. No slow cookers, no rice cookers for this week. No air fryer, no air fryer oven. Usually if you have an air fryer oven, it will go to regular bake. That's what you want for this. I actually have an air fryer oven. I know it will. You're just going to do a regular bake on this. You don't want to do that air fryer part of it. So you're going to
Chef?
do, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, what's your opinion on parboiled rice?
Minute rice is
Like, no, not minute rice, but like Uncle Ben's parboiled.
for this assignment.
Mhm.
No, it's
Yeah,
going to
that's-
overcook.
Yeah.
It's going to overcook by a lot. I don't like it for anything. It
I don't
actually
know.
comes out sticky. It comes out gross. Because anytime you're going to parboil something, you're trusting somebody else to have cooked it right, and they don't. And again, that's the thing. This does not take long. I guarantee you, plain long grain rice is cheaper in your store than Uncle Ben's. I know for a fact it's a lot cheaper because my sister always buys Uncle Ben's, and I yell at her, but she doesn't like to cook, so it's not her fault. But it's a lot more expensive than the actual just bag of rice.
There's a question here: is stove cooked rice fine, or do we have to use a rice cooker? So
You're not going to use a rice cooker.
yeah, and you're not, you do want to cook this in the oven.
Yeah, trust me, you're going to follow this recipe. All right, we're going to go through it here in just a second. All right, you're going to use butter. Again, unsalted butter is always best. Anytime you're cooking in the kitchen, do not substitute olive oil. Do not substitute something like that. For this, that butter is going to give you more flavor. I promise you, you will want to use the regular butter. Onion, cut in a brunoise. Again, you say use the same thing as that chopped onion for that small dice, only you do it smaller for the brunoise. The reason we use the brunoise is because, again, you're going to get that beautiful flavor, but you're not going to get those big chunks of onion that we don't want. You want your pieces of onion to match the size of your rice because you want that nice smooth bite. Okay. You're going to use chicken stock or water if you want. You can also use a vegetable stock if you would rather. And then kosher salt. You're going to preheat your oven to 350. Okay. You're going to heat your butter over medium heat in that really thick bottom pan. Okay. You're not going to put it in a skillet. You're going to do it in the saucepan. You're going to heat that butter. You're going to sweat your onions. You want them to be translucent. You do not want them to be caramelized. We do not want brown little pieces of onion in your beautiful white rice. We want those just to be translucent, no color. Okay. Then you're going to add once you get that a little bit translucent, it doesn't have to be cooked all the way through. You're going to add your rice to that. You're going to stir that in there till it's coated in that fat. Again, you don't want to brown this. You're not making rice-a-roni. You don't want to brown anything. There's no pasta in there to turn brown for that rice-a-roni, I promise. You just want that to be coated in that fat, okay? You're not getting it colored. Once you get that coated in that fat, you're going to add your water. Stick to these ratios. 1 cup of long grain rice is 8 ounces, okay, to 14 ounces of liquid, right? We suggest highly, make sure your liquid is warm. Make sure it's hot. Again, take your chicken stock, get it warm first, right? Put it on once you get your rice coated, do not wash your rice. You do not want to wash off the starch that's on the outside. Actually, what happens when you wash your rice is you actually start that the starch going out of that rice already. You don't want to do that. That makes actual stickier rice. Okay. The water activates the starch in that rice to start coming out of it. That's why your rice is sticky when you wash it. You don't want it to be. Okay. So you never ever wash your rice first. The amount of starch that comes out of it while it's cooking is the amount that's supposed to come out of it while it's cooking. Okay. So you never wash your rice first. You put your, once you've heated it up, you put your warm liquid over it. Again, make sure your chicken stock or your water, I suggest chicken stock because it's got flavor, is warm or boiling before you put it over your rice. You're going to bring that up to a boil. It's going to take like 2 seconds. Then you're going to put the lid on that, and then you're going to put it in your oven that's heated to 350. Once you put the lid on that and put it in your oven, you're going to set your timer for, it says 18 to 20 minutes. My house is 20 minutes. I've set it for 18 and it needs just a touch longer. So I do 20 at 18, check it. If it looks like it's still pretty wet, cover it, put it back in there for another 2 minutes. Trust me, once you pull that out and then you fluff that with a fork, that rice is going to be perfect. And you don't think it is. You're going to be like, oh my God, it's going to burn. It's going to burn. It's going to burn. I promise it's not. It's going to come out amazing. You will be surprised. I promise you. It comes out beautiful. Okay. So really quickly, because we are out of time, the pictures for that, again, super simple. Self-ID sanitizer, mise en place. Okay. Everything you need for that rice. Your onion and that beautiful brunoise. I actually suggest using a white onion. I did take a picture of the red onion because it's easier to see in that brunoise. But I suggest you guys use a white onion, even that simple yellow onion, because you won't see it. Again, the idea is for that rice to be beautiful white rice, not have that onion speck in there. So you don't want to see it. I did show you a picture of the brunoise onion here as a red onion because I want you guys to see how that onion comes out of a brunoise. It's not going to be perfect. Onion brunoise just doesn't come out perfect. It just doesn't because it's an onion. Your onion sweating in your pan, again, getting no color. You see that that temperature is nice and low. It's not caramelizing. That's the point. Your rice added in, again, not getting color. See how clear your onions are? They're not caramelized. They're just translucent. Your boiling water added in. You bring that to just a boil. You're going to cover that. You're going to put that in your oven. It should be covered. They took it off to take the picture. And then you're going to fluff that up. And that's what your rice looks like when it comes out. Again, I showed you a picture of the one without the red onion because I wanted you to see what it looks like, where it's supposed to look like without that red onion. All right. That is your assignment for this week. Again, rice pilaf and either the pinto beans or the white beans. You do not do both. All right. If you do both, I will grade them, but you're not going to get extra credit. You're only going to get as high of a grade as either one of them is. So please just do one or the other. Do the rice following this recipe. No, you can't do it on the stovetop. You have to use an oven. You can't just use the rice cooker. Those aren't going to work because you can't put one of those in your oven. All right. Yeah. Don't put your rice cooker in the oven. Trust me, it's not a good thing. Anything to add, Chef?
Totally unrelated to the recipes. If we happen to mute you or turn your camera off during the live session, it's because there was a distraction of some sort. Please don't take it personally. We're just trying to maintain a very streamlined, professional recording here so that you can watch it without any distractions. If you have to take a phone call or, if you need to speak to your child or someone, just turn your camera off and then you can turn it back on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And other than that, I don't think I have anything that can't wait until study hall tomorrow.
Awesome. What are chicken cubes?
Are you talking about like bouillon?
Yes.
Yeah, if you have it and don't want to spend money on chicken stock, I would let you slide by, but you're going to get a superior result if you use that chicken stock.
Okay, because I ran out. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, if you have it at home, then that'll do.
Okay.
But do the next time you make it, try to do it with some stock so that you can discern the difference.
Okay.
Michelle, personally, I love the pinto beans. Pinto beans are my favorite bean.
Mine too.
And let's see, there was one other question. Yes, you will get a link for study hall for tomorrow.
Yep.
We'll send out a message.
Yep, absolutely. And we're just going to go over, we'll touch on the recipes a little bit, but I do have other information that I want to tell you guys about the different grains and legumes. But I will let you guys know that this is going to be, tomorrow is the last actual study hall. After that, week 4 for study hall time is going to be live demos with Chef Matthew. So we'll all be there. But yeah, there's going to be different things demoed each week for that study hall. So that's super fun. So make sure you're making it for those. The reason we do it in week 4 is because usually by then we don't have to go over like a lot of the class page information and that kind of stuff. We focus right on the recipes for class, and then we get all the other information in on that first day. So then we do have time for that study hall to do those demos. So Roland Darius, did you have another question? I'm probably saying your name super wrong. You can correct me. It's okay.
Yeah, you're fine. Or you can call me Ray. That's fine.
Ray. Okay, that's easier. Ray is a lot easier.
So when you boil the rice in the container, can I change it to another container, the rice, like in another pot?
Yes.
To put it in the oven?
Yeah, to put it on the oven. Yeah, inside of the oven.
Yeah, that's fine.
And cover with aluminum foil.
Yeah, that works
That'll
too.
work just fine. I mentioned in the chat, you can use Pyrex, you can use a metal baking pan, you can use a disposable aluminum pan. Just make sure it's not so wide that it's shallow, and you want it to have enough depth that how do I say this? So that the rice and the liquid aren't spread too thin. Otherwise it's gonna it won't cook properly.
Right. If they have too much surface area, think
That's what I'm
about it. If
trying-
there's too much surface area, that heat is dispersed too much, and that liquid's going to evaporate too quickly, and it's not going to cook that rice correctly. So you want to make sure that it's a little more contained, a little more compact in there. So make sure you're not using that thin cake pan. You'd want to put it in something smaller. A loaf pan would even be better. Something
And-
like that.
Real quick, before you guys go on. With the white beans, I saw the tomato sauce. It was like on top of the beans. So I didn't see like the whole process with that. Like
Follow
the tomato
recipe, because you do mix it in, you cook it in with it at the end. So yeah,
Oh,
if you want to make those white beans, like read that recipe again real carefully. If you need to go back and watch the live, you can definitely do that on the recording, and make sure that you are following that recipe, because you kind of cook them in there a little bit, but when you go to plate it, that white and that red are such a contrast that you notice that red a lot. That's why they're beautiful, because they have that beautiful color contrast on there. And if you take that parsley, because you use the parsley stems in there, you take the tops of that and you kind of chop it up and kind of just sprinkle just a little on top, give it that pop of that bright green. Your plating is beautiful on there. You have that white bean, that red mixed in, that green on top. Oh, beautiful.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, you guys have a great evening. I'm going to go watch me some hockey. I will see you guys tomorrow for study hall, 4 o'clock Central Time. Same bat time, different bat channel.
Channel.